All right. Now you know what time it is. It's time for the big boy time. And we're going down to college football. Oh yeah, and it's only our favorite conference this year, the Big 12. All right. They handed out the official awards for the expansion. So with the first pick of the 2021 Big 12 expansion, the Big 12 selects BYU out of the independent conference. Yes, they don't have Zach Wilson, but we're going to figure it out anyway. With the second pick, the Big 12 conference pick, the Cincinnati Bearcats. Ooh! Cincinnati, yeah, Lou Fickle and the boys, come on down. You've been a top 10 French team for the last 2 years. We're going to need it. Hey, and Lou Fickle, if you think about leaving the conference for another team, you got another thing coming. All right. With the third pick, we're going to take – no, they didn't win the championship. Don't worry about it. With the third pick, we're going to take UCF, University of Central Florida. And, yes, we are still suspicious about that national championship banner that they got hanging up in their stadium. And being that they had the confidence to pull that, even though they know they didn't win the championship, we need them in our conference. And last but not least, now this last selection is a team that it gave a couple of teams in the Big 12, a few long nights, and they only down the street. No, I'm not talking about SMU. I'm talking about the Houston Cougars. So with that said, we want to formally congratulate those 4 teams for getting invited to the big boys. Come on down, or somewhat of the big boys, but we're bigger than your boys, so we'll just add you on in. So there we go, folks. Now we went from 8 back to 12. Listen, yes, I know Texas and Oklahoma is still there, but for all intents and purposes, you know what that is. That's like getting an advance payment at work, right? Oh yeah, I got paid early, but you got to pay it back, right? That's Texas and Oklahoma. Yeah, they still here, but eventually that's gonna leave, and you're gonna be with what you with. Now, with that said, I had to throw that out there. So Jay, my question to you: now that we got the formal invitations gone, we know the 4 teams that's supposed to come in. Does this change your mind about the Big 12 future as being, remaining one of the Power 5 conferences? Does this give you, if you was a Big 12 fan, does this give you, a little more confidence about your conference than you had when you first heard Texas and Oklahoma was leaving the conference?
Forget that. I want to talk about that opening that you gave out. What an opening. Lord have mercy. That's what can we get we gotta call the NFL directly and be like, yo, we got a dude that can run the draft and run the draft picks. Like that whole stick where Roger comes out there and gets booed every pick. We don't have to do that anymore. We got a dude that can hype it up for you. Something to consider. But the Big 12, look, I think this is enough. I like what they do. This is something we kind of we suspected that we would see. I think this makes them, keeps them relevant in the Power 5 discussion. Actually, I was just looking through what the Pac-12 has and what the Big 12 will have. They're comparable. I think the Pac-12 has the best team, best program in Oregon. That's the biggest thing I think the Big 12 is missing. When you remove Oklahoma, not Texas, because Texas ain't done nothing recently. Oklahoma's the team that slides on in to the 4th spot of the college football playoff repeatedly. Mm-hmm. That's what the Big 12 will miss the most, I think, from a competitive standpoint. But if you look at, I guess, the totality of everything, Big 12 has some solid depth, assuming that, these teams, assuming that particularly Cincinnati, if Cincinnati can maintain what they do, that's gonna be something to reckon with, because I think that's a real program. The AP voters obviously think a lot of them. If you got them in the preseason top 10, that says a lot. So I think their depth will be really nice. It's just automatically better. You feel a lot better having 12 teams as opposed to 8. And if you look at their depth, and we're pretty much keeping this has been a football discussion. We'll keep it there. They only got one joke team in the conference, and that's Kansas. Kansas stinks. And they got some programs that are kind of down trying. Texas Tech. What have they done lately? West Virginia's kind of meh. Haven't seen TCU do much lately, but they're still somewhat respectable. Kansas is the only joke program. The Pac-12. Can I interest you in Washington State and Oregon State? They stink, and they've stunk for quite a while now. Even though Washington State, they did a few things with Mike Leach, but you get what I'm saying. They're not. They're nothing impressive. Oh, by the way, speaking of Washington, Washington lost to Yellowstone National Park last week or something or another. It's just
you hate
terrible.
to see it.
What is Arizona doing with Kevin Sumlin? I don't think they're doing much. Colorado, that's just a random team out there. Like they had a couple of years ago they did something that it was in the Pac-12 title game maybe, but it's just not much. When is Stanford gonna do anything ever again? Like, remember when David Shaw replaced Harbaugh and it was like, oh, David Shaw, he's doing stuff. They ain't done much lately. Like they had nothing to write home about. California Golden Bears, yeah, I don't know. I mean, you got Southern Cal, you got Oregon, Utah with Whittingham. They've been kind of good. Herm Edwards got Arizona State doing some things. It looked like UCLA might do something now, but I think after you get past Oregon and Southern Cal, these are two comparable conferences. And I actually think the new Big 12 might have some better depth. It does depend on how, Central Florida and Houston, probably those two teams, how they transition the most. But I think, look, Central Florida got a dude named Gus Malzahn, who I'm sure has a lot to prove. And he's probably really excited about this, because I thought he was a really, really good coach at Auburn. It's tough being in the Iron Bowl every year and going up against Nick Saban and being in that side of the SEC. And he was able to get him a couple times, so.
That's true. I got a question for you. Off of what you just said about Gus Malzahn. So which coach is the happiest, right? Lou Fickell or Gus Malzahn? Because you remember Lou Fickell, hung around Ohio State for a while. Then Cincinnati been this team that's been like top 10 for the last 2 years. And the only reason they haven't been getting that extra push is because they're not in the Power 5 conference. Now he probably get that chance within the next 2 years, just like you said about Gus Malzahn. So an argument could be made. Which coach you think is the happiest about this move?
I think it's still Gus Malzahn, because Gus Malzahn just got, probably the biggest demotion you could ever have, going from the SEC, playing Nick every season, beating him a couple times in the Iron Bowl, made a national championship game back in 2013, which is the final year of the BCS, came up a little short in that one. He gets kicked out of here to Central Florida, and lo and behold, first year of Central Florida, hey, we're moving up, guys. We're heading to the Big 12. So, I mean, I got to think, even though, I think there's an argument to be made for Luke Fickell, I'd still go with Gus Malzahn, because he goes from up top to way down, and now he's back somewhere in the middle. But he's probably feeling a lot better about this, Big 12, AAC to the Big 12. That's a step up. I still think that it's a little unfortunate that the American Athletic Conference is holding a big L right now. They losing a lot of firepower. And then remember, the AAC is kind of, a lot of people may think it's kind of a joke, but I mean, they be looking comparable with some, obviously not the Big Ten or the SEC, but I mean, they come up with some quality depth. I mean, and they, you put them in some of these bowl games, they stack up. Even maybe there's a lack of motivation in some of these games where we see Central Florida have success or some of these things, but that's all over now. The AAC got gutted. Some sort of alliance merger type thing would have definitely been beneficial for the AAC, but that's not the route they're going to be able to go, I guess. So, but I do think this does help the Big 12. It keeps them relevant. They are going to need these teams to, step up and be something. And the biggest thing for the Big 12 is they need a team that can lead the conference in football. I'm unsure if they have one right now. I mean, it's hard to imagine another team in that conference replacing what Oklahoma can be for them. I think we'll get maybe Iowa State will show me something on tomorrow, but it's just one of those things when you look at them, you're like, man, I don't see a team that can do what Oklahoma does, but it keeps them relevant in the Power Five, and I think there's a discussion there between the Pac-12 and the Big 12 of who's weaker.
Yes, I do agree. I think off the bat, you'll say Pac-12 is stronger, but I think as time go on, like you said, I think it'll start revealing itself, and we'll be like, hey, the Big 12 ain't, you know what I'm saying? These new teams, because listen, how I look at it is, right now, if Cincinnati, Houston, UCF, and BYU was to join next year, I can make an argument with Texas and Oklahoma out the way. Let's say Texas and Oklahoma was still in the way. None of those teams are the brand that Texas is, but, I think Cincinnati and UCF will get Texas out of here. I think you give me a good neutral field game, I'm willing to, I know, Steve Sarkisian got some things going, but if you give me the Tom Herman, Texas, or the Charlie Strong, Texas, yeah, I think Cincinnati, UCF can get them out of here. But my thing is this, even right now, so let's say you take Texas and Oklahoma out of the mix. Right now, Cincinnati has an argument of being the second best team in the Big 12. I would assume you would put you would say Iowa State is probably the best team, maybe Oklahoma State, but I'll put Cincinnati probably right now. I'm not overly impressed with Oklahoma State. I'll probably put Cincinnati number 2. I'll put Iowa State and I'll put Cincinnati number 2. And you want to put Oklahoma State 3? I'll put UCF 4. That probably be my top 4. I got it. TCU. What about TCU? You're right. What about TCU? Like, honestly, what about the frog horns? Give me some. Oh, my bad. Horned frogs. I'm sorry. So give me something like Gary Patterson. I got it. He legit. But TCU ain't knocking people's socks off either. When the last time they really did anything spectacular? UCF done more than them in the last 5 to 7 years. So people sit here and they knock on this AAC thing like, oh, Big 12 got these big old stadiums, all their revenue. But listen, if we talking about on the field productivity, these some killers you got coming in. If you talking about on the field, I done seen UCF in more New Year's Six bowls than most of them Big 12 teams outside of Oklahoma and Texas. Let's keep it real. Texas Tech, what New Year's Six bowl you seen them in? Kansas, what New Year?
What bowl?
What bowl you seen Kansas in? You right. You know what I'm saying? So some of these teams that people waving around, Iowa State. Yeah, they was in the New Year's Six bowl last year. Where was that the year before though? So let's not get ahead of ourselves. That Big 12, y'all so much better. You got some guys coming in that can actually stick their chest out a little bit and say, hey, we done some things. You know what I'm saying? Cincinnati was all in the mix for a playoff spot last year. Guess what other team in the Big 12 was in the mix? Oklahoma. Nobody else. Because I'm going to tell you, that whole Iowa State hype, what did we say? We said, oh, yeah, Iowa State beat Oklahoma, but we still don't think they're better than Oklahoma. They just beat them. And then what happened? Oklahoma came back. Yeah, about that last game. Yeah. We're going to go ahead and take care of this. So, with that said, I really don't like how the Big 12 fans and representatives think they're so much better because it's just not true. Once again, like I always say, if you were so much better, Texas and Oklahoma wouldn't be leaving. Now, the argument that you got with the Pac-12 is, and I think that's legit because I think those are the two conferences that are going to be fighting it out for that final spot, right? Because you would think the SEC is penciled in, the Big Ten is penciled in, and then you got the Clemson used to be penciled in. Now we don't quite know what's going on with the ACC right now. But you would think 2 spots out of the 4 penciled in. That bar none, if I don't see no more games for the rest of the season, we're gonna get somebody from the Big Ten. We're gonna get somebody from the SEC. Then now you got the other two spots getting fought between the Pac-12, the Big 12, and the ACC. For all intents and purposes, I'm gonna just put the ACC to the side. If it ain't Clemson, I would love to see who comes out. Dare I say Virginia Tech, but I'm gonna put them to the side. But you will fight for that one spot between the Big 12 and the Pac-12. I'm sorry, man. I ain't trying to take a jab at you. I'm just saying Virginia Tech looked pretty good against North Carolina. But either way, you will fight that out, and I'm with you. You got Oregon that's a pretty clear-cut number one in the Pac-12. I know Utah's not sexy, but Utah's out there. USC, they're out there, right? And then when you get to the Big 12, like you said, Iowa State, that's your clear-cut number one. I don't know if that gets that. I'm be honest. I don't think that moves the needle. Not when you out here struggling with Northern Iowa. And then we're gonna see what you got against actual Iowa. Like, I don't know if that moves the needle. You know what I mean? So I'm with you on that. I think it is an argument to put which conference is stronger, Pac-12, Big 12. And I think one of these days we're gonna sit down, we're gonna chop it up and make a video about it. I think that's a good segment for the future. But as of right now, stick to the Big 12. Hey, listen, you back to 12. I think it's a good move. I think old Bob Bosley, you kept your job for a couple more years because you probably was out of there if you didn't get something done. But I think he did a good job. And listen, for what it's worth, he did say that they might not be finished. They might bring in 2 more teams and make it 14. So we'll see how they go.
As an example, because like you talking about TCU and like, oh, TCU, and just an example, because get a lot of, seems like we get a lot of Big 12 fans up on the page, just like to chirp, don't disrespect TCU. Can I just say, like, TCU over the past 3 seasons in conference is 12-15. It's not good, guys. It's not good. That's kind of why, we're not all that concerned about TCU right now. And I get it. Gary Patterson's a great coach, and they had, 3 out of 4 years where they won 11 games. But the last 3 years haven't been nothing to write home about. 7-6 overall, 7-6, 5-7, 6-4. Kind of average. So that's kind of what we're getting at. And they're not the only ones. You can go through, West Virginia hasn't been great lately. We know about Texas Tech, Kansas State. I mean, just kind of meh programs, which is why Texas, Oklahoma leaving, especially Oklahoma, because Oklahoma does the Clemson for the Big 12. They carry the conference. You lose that, got a little bit of a problem, because I know me and you are both a little skeptical on Iowa State and, of course, Oklahoma State. It seems like every time you expect something from them, they don't get it done. So that's what we're getting at, folks.